Hey everyone, I'm Cam from Faircord, and welcome to the Death Decathalon Guide. KI has officially announced that the upcoming Death Decathalon will begin on Tuesday, April 13th. This video assumes you know a lot about the event, so if you're newer and haven't watched my general decathlon guide yet, be sure to check that video out first. Okay, starting off, let's discuss the best treasure cards to carry. This is a list of all non-vendor TC that are better than vendor ones. If the event has already started when you're watching this, there's almost no shot you'll see any of these in the bazaar, but if it hasn't yet, try your best to grab these when they're available. Generally speaking, stock up on what you need depending on what your goal is for the event. If you want to farm stages 1 through 4, for example, then look into buying a lot of spells rank 5 and below. But if you're trying to beat Dworgen at the top, you should only buy a couple of low pip spells and buy a bunch of gnomes and Forest Lord. Okay, let's break these down. As you can see, there's a lot less helpful life treasure cards than the other schools. Pretty much the only things you'll need are the easy to get ones. If you're going to try to get to stage 10, you'll need a lot of gnomes, so stock up on those. Forest Lord is good for everyone, and remember, these are not from any vendors, even though all other 48 spells are. If you're unable to snatch any, hitting enemies individually is a viable strategy. All these yellow section cards are just better versions of vendor TC, with the exception of Earthwalker, which is a good middle ground since life doesn't have a normal 5-pip hit spell. Most of the blue and red cards are too rare to use here, but Jade Oni, Potboiler, and Stonebreaker are the top tier ones that you won't have much use for elsewhere. Leaf Storm is kind of in between. While valuable, I don't see much reason to hang on to these, and you should use them if you have them. Important to note that I've been noticing a lot of these cards that are usually super easy to get have been very scarce this time around, so if you can't get any of these, don't worry about it, you can still win with just vendor TC. The possible minions for this decathlon are Sprite Guardian, which you can get from the Zafaria library, Jade Oni from the Hand of Doom pack, or the Bazaar if you're lucky. Life Brandon from farming Neberix. And Ahsokawa Tama from the Road Warriors pack. As always, I don't think there's any reason to buy packs for these minions, but if you have free time this month, I'd highly recommend Brandon farming. Now that you have your hits, let's discuss the death enemies and what you need to watch out for. Starting at stage 3, the enemies start to cast Plague. There's multiple ways to combat this. First, you could pack some Cleansed Charm TC, although sometimes you might not have the deck space to fit those, and you could run out. Second, you could choose to calculate your buffs and hits in a way that overkills the enemies, incorporating that you have a plague on you. Third, you could bring some low pip hits to take off the plagues or to do a little extra damage if your plagued hit doesn't do enough. They could be life or another school, but using these cards would take off the buffs that you have up. Lastly, you could just rely on your Willcast pet to take off the plagues, but that may not be the best because Willcasts are limited and they tend to use Plague a lot. The next challenge is Poison, first seen on stage 4. Like the Ice Decathalon Frostbites, if you have a decently high level deck, you can let the flat resist take care of it and change nothing about your strategy. You'll just have to suck it up and shield every turn for a while if they have a lot of pips. For this one, do not use Triage. Poison doesn't do too much, and you will really need it for the Fire Decathalon. Fortify could help you survive the damage as well on the lower floors. But keep in mind, the higher you go, the higher pierce they have, and they will eventually pierce all the way through. After stage 4, nothing significantly changes for a while. And it's important to note that as they get stronger spells, they don't actually get Vampire or Wraith. The biggest drain you have to worry about before stage 10 is just Ghoul. On stage 7, they start to cast Headless Horseman. This spell has no utility, but it does a ton of damage. Make sure you always have a shield up when they get 4 or more pips. On stage 9, enemies can cast King Artorias. This is basically a bigger headless, and it will put on an infection. There is not much to do with this. I personally wouldn't waste a turn cleansing it off. Chances are your pet will take care of it if you're using a healing one, but either way, you may need to begin packing more heals than you're used to. Stage 10 gets wild. They have 3 crazy spells in their spell pools. First of which is Dr. Von's Monster. While it only does 10 more damage than King Art, it will heal them back for a significant amount if you're not properly shielded. To not have to worry about this, just devise a strategy with enough buffs so that you can take them out in one shot. Or, if you have the deck space, pack a bunch of backup hits. Next, they can Empower. Them getting extra pips isn't a big deal since they mostly get power pips anyway, but this spell will take off any feints that you place on them. Thus, for this stage only, I think you should pack backup feints in case they're taken off, or pack a bunch of blades and school-specific traps to avoid issues altogether. But that might not do enough damage. If you do use feints, you should save it for the round before you hit, just to minimize the possibility of them using Empower. The last difficult spell is a rough one, Bad Juju. This has the same taking off feints issue as Empower, and it also puts a negative 90% charm on you. For this, you could use all the previously stated methods for dealing with Plague, like extra hits and cleanses, except do not try to hit through it, because that will not work. Quick tip, cleanse as soon as possible when you get Juju'd, because when they have King Art and Plague, they can bury the Juju deep in your charms, requiring you to cleanse more than once. Also note that since they are completely immune to death, they will not be dealing any damage to themselves with Empower or Juju. Okay, let's move on to pets. Your first priority for making a pet is getting a frozen Kraken one if you don't have it. This does the most damage and will help you a ton in all future decathlons. If you already have this, a Will Cast Leafstorm pet could help you farm the lower stages better than Kraken can. It won't be super helpful higher up, but it does boost. Please do not use Earthwalker. Although it looks nice, it ultimately does not do as much, and it takes 5 turns to cast, although it just says 0 on the card. Finally, let's discuss deck setup. Your deck will depend on what deck you have, what your pet is, which stages you're doing, what jewels you have, your level, what enemies the spells cast on the stages you're doing, what cards you have, and on and on. With all those factors, rather than showing you 1,000 different deck setups, I'm going to walk through with you how to use the spreadsheet to make your own decks. For this example, let's say you're working with Death Deck 3. First, you will need to decide what will give you the most points. After some trial and error, it looks like doing stages 1 through 3 would be too difficult with this deck. So, if I did stages 1 and 2 and the first 4 of 3, that could give me 15 points. If I farm stages 2 and 3 entirely, I would get 20 points. So that's what I'm going to do. Deck 3 has 6% damage, so I'll be looking at column D here for the effective health. The Mire Witch here will be taken out 100% by the Nature's Wrath. That's easy enough. The same enemy is on the next floor, so we'll put in 1 more for her. The other enemy here can get taken out by Nature's Wrath, but as you can see, the low end here would not do enough. If we scroll down to the damage chart, it looks like Wrath with a trap will do plenty. The next enemy has the best name ever, the Doom Shaka Kalaka, and Seraph can take that one out. And now we'll move on to stage 3. Now here's where it gets a little complicated. The enemies start to plague, but if we scroll down past the normal spells, there's a highlighted section which incorporates being plagued. So with a plague on, a Seraph with a trap does do enough. We'll put in 2 sets of those for the first floor and the first enemy on the second floor. The other enemy on this floor doesn't die to a trapped Seraph, but he does die to a bladed Seraph, so we'll throw that in. The boss here, with 485 effective health, can be barely taken out by a plagued centaur. With the rest of this space, we'll throw in a backup heal in case your pet doesn't heal enough, and throw in a couple more if you don't have a Maycast pet. Then the rest will be death shields. Our deck is ready, and we're ready to enter the tower. And with that is it for the Death Decathalon guide. I hope this was helpful. Please make sure to leave a comment below if you have any questions, or join the Discord in the description, and I'm available there to answer questions at any time. Please check out the general Decathlon guide if you haven't already, and I'll see you next month for the Fire Decathalon. Thanks for watching.